In this video, I'm going to speak about 5 spiritual books that changed my life. So books and reading has played a very powerful part in my journey and my transformation and my growth. And, I attribute a lot of my big pivot points in my life to times when I have read transformational books. Over the years, I have recommended some of these books to friends and people along my journey, and it's so amazing when they have walked away with the same kind of value, or years later came back to me and said, you know what, this book actually changed my life. And then I realized, wow, it wasn't just me. It's worthwhile sharing these books. And in some cases, I've actually bought copies for friends. So I'm sharing this in order of me having read it in my life. And I'm going to share a little bit about the story, or where I was at the time when I read the book. Because I think it's valuable to know that as I've progressed, as I've evolved, the value and the gift that each message has brought me changed, over the period of time, depending on where I was. Book number 1 is Conversations with God by Neale Donald Walsch. And I read this book when I was 19 years old. And at the time, I was studying actuarial science. It was a really tough degree, and I was surrounded by people that had numbers as their religion. It was very much an atheist environment, and I had a lot of questions. I remember having my summer holiday from university and just feeling so incredibly lost. I'd come from a very Christian upbringing, a Christian family, and not quite understanding where the concept of a universal force or a divine creator kind of came into play with the mentality of a world that was just governed by science and numbers. So my beautiful brother, he at the time had read this book, and he just gave it to me very gently and said, just read this, okay? And I did, and after 2 chapters, I came to him and I said, you actually read this book? This is amazing. I was completely blown away, and at the very young age of 19 was my first exposure to concepts and ideas that is not really readily available in religion or society today. So what I took out of Conversations with God, I was exposed to some of the fundamentals of spirituality, concepts that we are all one, that we are essentially the creators of our universe, that nothing is a coincidence, and really that life is so much more magical than it's made out to be. I mean, that's really, you see the themes of the books that I've chosen. I think all of these have a sense of magic. So I remember reading this book, and it's actually a series of a number of books, Conversations with God by Neale Donald Walsch. And I remember having completed the 3rd in the series and being outside and having a moment of about 10 seconds where I genuinely experienced being completely at one with everything around me. I remember looking at the trees and the birds, and there was no separation between myself and them. And it was such a bewildering experience that it made me cry. And in that moment, I truly got the nature of life and the nature of existence. I understood in that moment the purpose of being alive was to just experience, to walk through this life in ecstasy and in presence and enjoy the beauty that we get experience, that we are essentially God personified. And that was mind-blowing at the age of 19. And after having that seeing, there was no way I could go back. So really, it didn't matter what happened after that point. I was destined to live a life that would be founded upon spiritual principles. Okay, book number 2 that I recommend is a bit different, okay? It's called Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield. Okay, so I read this book in about my 3rd year of university, and it's a bit different in the sense that it is not just a teaching on spirituality, it's actually a fiction book. The narrator goes on this crazy adventure to seek or discover and search for 9 spiritual insights which are scattered across the globe. And The author explains that the book is meant to be written like a parable, and it really introduced me to the concept of energy frequency, being able to move between a material world and a spiritual world. And it's so interesting because where we are now in humanity, this whole talk about a 5D reality or 5D consciousness versus a 3D consciousness, these were concepts that were introduced in 1993 with Celestine prophecy in this fiction kind of context, where this man goes around and as he discovered these insights, he sees how the Mayans developed the capacity to be able to shift between the 3D and the 5D plane, or a more spiritual existence. And the spiritual existence is one where you can actually feel and sense energy. So this book blew my mind because it was the first, and I am an empath. So for me, it made sense for the first time being given an explanation, or a theory at least, as to why I could sense so deeply into energies, into people's moods, even into the space of a room, into cities and environments. This book lays out quite a beautiful explanation. Okay, my recommendation number 3, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Okay, so this is quite a well-known one. And, I actually attempted reading this for the first time again at university, but it wasn't my time. So with many of these books, it's all about timing. So I must say, if I'm speaking about something and something for you resonates and something else doesn't, then go with what resonates, right? And if you read any of these books and open up and it's just not, inspiring you in the way that it should be, it's not your time. And maybe there's another time for that book. And for me, this was the case with Power of Now. Is I wasn't ready the first time I read it. The concepts went right over my head. However, fast forward a couple of years and I'm in India, in Mumbai. I just attended a beautiful spiritual retreat, an adventure retreat across India, across the Himalayas. And I found myself again with this book in my hands, and I read it in about 3 days. And in that case, in that time, it was the right time. This book introduces the idea that the present moment is where life resides. And that is all we ever have to worry about. Not even worry, that is the only place our focus needs to be. And if we manage to do that, we would free ourselves from anxiety, we would free ourselves from suffering, we would live a much more easeful, relaxed, joyful, an abundant life, because in this present moment, everything that our heart desires is available to us. My 4th recommendation is Energy Speaks by Lee Harris. And this book I read in 2020 at a time when I was going through quite a lot of turbulence, quite a lot of internal battles. I was going through a broken heart at the time, and this book is actually a channeling. So if you heard of Lee Harris, he is an intuitive, he is a channeler, and he channels a group of beings called the Z's. And think of it as a direct instruction manual from another realm, a being or an entity or an intelligence that is a little bit more evolved than we are, so can see a little bit further, and thus can give us amazing guidance and guidelines. And what I love specifically about this book, why it changed me, is because of the incredible practical tools or practical exercises that Lee shares, or the Z's share in this book. How this changed my life at the time is I realized that I have the power to shift my energy state. I truly am the creator. Before I had understood this conceptually, but this book allowed me, and of course my mentors and things at the time, but the book was really the catalyst and the understanding of how I could consciously shift energy in my body, and how I could burn up concepts that weren't serving me, how I could invite new ideas and energies and frequencies that would serve me and open me up to more abundance. It completely transformed my state at the time, and it's actually a book worth re-listening many times. My 5th and final recommendation is The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. Okay, this is my most recent read. I read it in 2021, beginning of this year. Again, the timing was absolutely perfect because I had been challenged in my life about how control was just not serving me anymore, about how living a life that was dictated about what my personal opinions needed, what my personal preferences wanted, just was causing a lot of suffering. Of course, I had always, by that point, my spiritual journey was quite evolved and mature, but this book took it up a notch, all right? And it is actually an autobiography of Michael A. Singer himself about how at a really young age he made the choice and the commitment that he was gonna let life lead. That whenever he was encountered with a decision, that he would put his personal preferences aside and see what it was that life required him to do in this moment. And you know, when you truly can live from that space, life becomes so much more joyful. You know, living from a place of surrender. Surrender is not something that is passive. It takes a high level of consciousness to surrender in every single moment. What you're actually doing is you're letting go of anything that may arise inside you, any emotion, any triggers. You're just allowing it to be there. You're not allowing it to control you. You're just stepping into what is required of you. And if you can do that, it just removes so much contradiction within your inner world. So those are the 5 spiritual books that have changed my life. I hope you found some value from that. Go and buy one of these if anything resonated for you. Of course, there are so many more out there and so many that did almost hit the list. But, you know, I really wanted to express the 5 that were life-changing because, you know, books do have the potential to change our lives. So thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed this, and I'll see you with some more videos soon.